Hey guys, and welcome to Petrol Ped. So you're in the market for a Mini, and the traditional Mini hatch, well, maybe that's not quite big enough. Maybe you need a little bit more practicality. Up until now, the only option you had, if you wanted to stay in the Mini family anyway, was to go to the Countryman in the modern Mini lineup, which for many people is too big. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm running one as a long-termer at the moment. It's a brilliant car, loads of practicality, big boot space, room for 4 adults, elevated driving position. It's a brilliant thing, but not very mini. So what if you wanted something a bit smaller than that, but a bit bigger than the hatch? Well, up until now, you haven't had that option. Up until now, that is, because now we have the Mini Aceman. So here it is, the Aceman. Now first up, this is only available as a battery electric. There's no petrol engine version of this, unlike the hatch and the Countryman, and that is bound to upset some people and make others happy. From a styling point of view, I see far more Countryman in this. It's got quite an angular front end, these headlamps, and I know that's upset a few people, Countryman, because they're not round, they've got these lovely angular shapes. But I do even see a little bit of a nod to classic Mini, because behind the headlamp there's this little crease in the bonnet that's a little bit like the old classic Mini with the kind of bit of bodywork that went back from the front lights. I quite like that nod to its heritage. You've got these two little indents there, which is very similar to Countryman. And then the front end, because it's an EV, all of this, which would be, if you like, on an ICE version, would be a radiator grille. That's all enclosed. You've got some of the safety systems. There's a little camera just there. There's a couple of radiator inlets there for cooling, because electric cars still need cooling. And then just generally, this car is a kind of crossover style. So it's got big wheel arch covers over it. It's got roof rails. It's got a slightly taller squatter stance, a slightly higher ride height to give it that crossover feel. But I like it. What I don't like is this. There are 3 trim levels of this car. There's the E, the SE, which is this one, and then there will be a JCW in the new year. This just has a JCW styling pack on it, so it is adorned with John Cooper Works badging, but it's not a John Cooper Works. And I know that that's a popular choice with customers, but I'm a big JCW fan, and I see this, it's the same thing as VW do with their R badging on a car that's not an R, or M Sport badging on a BMW that's not a BMW M Series car. And I just think it dilutes the John Cooper Works brand. This isn't a John Cooper Works. Have it as a sport model, that's great. This is actually called an SE Sport, but don't put JCW badging on it. Sorry, Mini, not a fan. As you follow the side of the car down, the glass and the cabin part takes a real kind of curve in, but the bodywork stays out, and you get these big hips on the back. And I'm not quite sure what I think of them. It's quite a bold bit of styling. It kind of shows this teardrop shape, and I'm sure it's fantastic for aero. This hip gives the car now quite a wide stance at the back, a purposeful stance at the back. It maybe makes it look a little bit sporty. And from this angle, I kind of get it. From the angle you're looking at, I'm not sure just yet. But when you follow that glass round, you see the square hip much better now. And then you've got this bit of aero work on the back with this kind of overhanging spoiler with a couple of little contours on there. I like that. You've got the little kind of shark's fin bump on the back for all of your sat nav and all of that kind of stuff. And then I think the rear view's quite nice. I like the writing on the back. In terms of boot space, 300 litre boot. So that, it's not as big as the Countryman, obviously, it's a smaller car, but I think that's a decent sized boot. And then you've got quite nice, I mean, there's obviously no exhaust coming out of here. There's sort of fake diffusers on the back, but it does look quite nice. And then this legend grey paintwork with the black trim, I like that contrast, and I quite like the little S in the lime green just there. So yeah, all in all, rear end, this is where I can see a few logistical challenges. Ow, ow. Yeah. Now my feet are actually underneath the front seat. This seat's all the way back for me as a driver, and as you've tuned in regularly, I'm sure you all know, 6'3", 34, 35-inch inside leg, big long legs. So it's not a gigantic amount of space in here. And actually my head is just rubbing on the roof. This has got a nice pan roof, but I think that probably drops the ceiling or the roof lining a little bit just here. And then these, there we go, move that up that way. These headrests, you need to lift them up just so you can sit back a little bit. That makes it a little bit better. So it is quite tight in here, but yeah, it's not massive. Before we jump in the front, I need to mention the wheels. Once you look at those wheels and tell me what you see, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. All I need to say is I'm sure those wheels are really safe. Now, whilst there may not have been a huge amount of room in the back, safe to report there's plenty of room in the front, even for me, and I can get into a really nice, relaxed driving position. So, a few things. Firstly, the interior is dominated by this circular screen, and I am a big fan. I've got it in the Countryman I'm running as a long-termer, and I really like it. I have two grumbles with it though. First up, when you're using CarPlay just appears as a square in the middle, and the functionality is fine. It just doesn't quite sit well, and I know, or I can imagine, that getting it engineered to be a circular CarPlay would have been so costly. That's why it wasn't done. The more serious grumble I have is the climate control functionality on that is all done through the touch screen. You kind of have to touch there, and then you can slide or just adjust the temperature. But if you've got heated seats or heated steering wheel, like I have in this car, you have to touch the temperature, then you've got two little icons, and you can change to 3 different levels of heated seats or steering wheel, and that just is too fiddly. And when you're driving, I just think it's a little bit distracting. I would much rather have in cars things like the temperature up and down, heated seats, heated steering wheel on physical buttons somewhere, rather than in the actual touch screen. Let's talk about the steering wheel. I like the look of the steering wheel. My main grumble with the steering wheel is at the position at sort of 10 to and 10 past the hour. These bumps are just way too big, and the steering wheel generally is a bit too thick for my preference. I tend to sit with my hands at the quarter to and quarter past position, so my thumb's just above the 2 central spokes. And I love the canvas strap as the 3rd spoke, a real nice point of difference. So it is a nice steering wheel. I just think these bits are a little bit too thick. And then down in the central part, you've got a little cubby hole, a bit like I've got in Countryman. I'll be honest, the Countryman one I've yet to use. It's one of those nice things you go, oh, that's quite useful. Never actually used it. A couple of drinks holders, and then the wireless charge mount for my phone is just there. It's interesting, 3 different cars, 3 different places to charge your phone. I think the Countryman is the best one. It's like a little shelf. That one's the next best one, and then the actual hatch, I think, is the worst engineered of those. But I like these fins that go either side of the wireless charge mat. They're quite funky. And also the door handles are really cool. And then the last bit is, again, the same as the other 3 cars. I'm a big fan of this knit material. I just think it is just a bit different. And I've had plenty of comments when I did the first drive of the Countryman, and also when I've done videos with the Countryman since I've had it, comments about how easy is that to keep clean, or that looks like it would be a nightmare to keep clean. And my experience, I've been running that Countryman over 4 months now as a long-termer, that it's not actually that bad. The worst thing would be if you got lots of dust or sand or something like that in it. All you need to do is get a car vacuum and give it a bit of a whiz over, and it comes up really nicely. I've got a head-up display. So all in all, it's a really nice cabin, and it's got nods of the other two cars and things I really, really like. Let's have a little chat about the different trim levels, performance, money, that kind of thing. So 3 different levels, an E, an SE and a JCW. The E has a 38.5 kilowatt hour battery, whereas the SE and the JCW have a 49.2 kilowatt hour battery. So let's talk about the car we're sat in, because I think this will be probably the biggest seller for Mini, I think. So this has 218 horsepower and a WLTP range of 251 miles. So in the real world, I think 210, 220, something like that probably, which I know straight away for some people just isn't going to be enough. The JCW, same battery pack, but now it's got 258 horsepower, 350 newton meters of torque. So it's going to have significantly more performance, I think. So that's going to have a slightly detrimental effect on WLTP range. So JCW quoting 243 miles for the JCW. So again, I think 210, 220 is probably where you're going to be. They both support 11 kilowatts AC charging. For home domestic charging, I don't think that's really a very important number, because almost everyone's going to be on a 7 kilowatt single phase charger. It's only really if you ever plugged into a 3-phase 22 kilowatt charger that 11 kilowatts is going to come into play. And then DC charging, I'm going to say it only supports 95 kilowatt charging. And I think we're seeing more and more rapid chargers being rolled out, 150 kilowatts or higher. And it's a shame you can't tap into that rapid charging network. So 95 kilowatts, you'll still get a 10 to 80% charge in about half an hour. But I think if you've got such a limited range, just over 200 miles, and I appreciate why that number is what it is. It's because of the battery size and the power being pulled from the battery. Is a way to counteract that is to put faster charging than 95 kilowatts. So you can get 10 to 80% in 15 minutes, not half an hour, if you put in a 150 kilowatt charging or an 800 volt system or something. And again, I'm sure the reason that it's not got faster DC charging is a cost thing, to bring the price point in at the right place. But I think that's disappointing for me. Unladen weight is 1,720 kilos. And then the last thing, just pricing wise, so the E starts from £31,800 here in the UK. The SE starts from 36,300, and the JCW, when that comes in the spring, will start from 40,800. I reckon we go out for a drive, don't you? Because exterior styling, I like. It's like a shrunk down version of the Countryman, and I like the bold styling. Interior, I'm a big fan. There's a few grumbly bits, but then it can't all be perfect, can it? It's all about how it drives, what the all-electric platform's like, and what that performance. Does it have that mini go-kart feel? Okay, let's start the drive. I'm just playing with the different experiences. I'm in efficient mode at the moment with bonus range. I've got personal, vivid, timeless, balance, trail. I don't know what half of these do, to be honest, but I'm guessing that green is going to give me a little bit more range. And I'm just on some back roads. And first things first, suspension-wise, and it's particularly poor road surface. It is a little bit firm and a bit jittery. That's a kind of mini expectation for me, though. I don't think you buy one of these and expect, a Rolls-Royce ride. It's always going to be reasonably on the firm side, but then that also means that it has that sporty feeling. So here we go. Here's the first advantage of having an EV. You can go past horses and not scare them, because you're not making any noise. Quite like that. And then in terms of how the car drives in this green mode, it actually doesn't feel too sluggish at all, really. I got myself into a really nice driving position. There's plenty of adjustment in the seat and the steering wheel. And visibility is really good. Good set of door mirrors. Oh, I've got the speed bong, but don't worry. If I just push and hold the set button, that will turn my speed warning deactivation off, because this is a 20. I thought it was a 30 as I came in here. So yeah, in all Minis and BMWs, you just push and hold the set button and that turns the speed bong off. I have to admit, when in the Countryman I'm running, I've never used any of the experiences apart from the default one that you get in, which I think is called Core. So if I just push that up, there's Core. So that's the default one the car starts in. And then also I tend to go up into the Sport mode, which is actually called Go-Kart. Woohoo! And that gives you a much more lively, much more sprightly feel. I love the display that you get in the car as well. Now, while we're pootling through this very peaceful little village on the worst possible bit of road, I'll put the sat-nav back on. My concern with this car, as I've alluded to already, is it's not got the biggest amount of range. And I'm not going to be one of these guys that comes and does an electric car review and just moans and bangs on about range. But I've driven quite a few EVs recently that are up in the kind of 300 miles, and I just think that changes the dynamic of the car completely. I think a couple of 100 miles in the small Mini, a city car, then I think that's actually, you can live with that. You probably very rarely do more than 100 miles a day, plug it in at night time, assuming you have somewhere to plug it in. But this car's just a little bit bigger, it's aimed at the family. I would just want a little bit more. I was in the Kia EV3 just last week, and that's not a dissimilar size to this car, maybe a little bit bigger. And that'll do well over 300 miles. In fact, it's not WLTP, it's like 370 or 380, I think. It's way more than this. And I think that just makes the car a much more livable with proposition. You see now, straight away on throttle there, I've got Mini characteristics. I've got just a little bit of, it's not quite torque steer, but you can just feel the steering wheel just being pulled in your hand, and I like that because it makes me feel straight away like I'm in a Mini. This car, unlike the Countryman that I'm running, which is all-wheel drive, this is just a front-wheel drive platform, but actually it's got plenty of go. If I just pull back again, you've got that instant torque. It's got a really nice sporty feeling to the car, which is what you want in a Mini. And I know there'll be some people that just don't get Minis, and I'm not even going to entertain the conversation around old classic Minis versus BMW Mini, however you want to describe it. I know Minis have got bigger, and it's more of a brand now than a description of the size of the car. But what I love about Mini is the character that their cars have, irrespective of size. You know, I drive my little Roadster, it just instantly has that feel. The new hatch has that feel. The car I drove to the N24 was just an absolute riot. And the Countryman is a big car. It's a big kind of crossover mid-size SUV. This just feels a lot smaller than the Countryman, but it's got a little bit more practicality, bigger boot space. I certainly feel like I've got lots of passenger or lots of driver space. It's a bit disappointing in terms of room in the back for passengers if you've got a tall driver, but when you're pushing on down a road like this, it has really great road manners. The faster I'm going a bit quicker now, and the suspension's just dialing out stuff much more easily. I guess the road surface is a bit smoother than the previous road, but as the road now opening up, it's a bit more sweepy. Now it feels it's on the brakes, a nice brake feel. Now I feel much more like I'm in a Mini. You just pull out there, mate. That's absolutely all good. Wow. Oh, and he's gone onto the flickers straight away. What on earth? I've got Oh, okay, I get it now. So I've got a little hummingbird now telling me I'm doing very well, I'm being very efficient. And if I come out of this corner and I put my foot on the throttle just a bit too hard, I now turn into a panther look. I'm doing high consumption, naughty Peter. But now I've got a 16% downhill, so I should be able to recuperate lots and lots of lovely electrons for the battery as I come off the throttle, and then I'm just in B mode. And actually it's so aggressive, it's almost stopping the car. So the regen braking is so good. I've got it on its maximum setting. As I come down here, it's slowing the car down to a point where it's nearly stopping. This is a lovely bit of road. Oh, look at that. Panther, hummingbird, panther, hummingbird. Oh, what a great game this is. I think, unfortunately though, I'd probably be driving around in panther mode way too much. I'm bored of that now. I'm gonna put it back up into go-kart mode. So final impressions of the Aceman in the limited time I've had with the car today. I like the external styling, but I'm a fan of the Countryman. I think if you don't like the Countryman, you're not going to like this car because it's just a shrink-wrapped version of it. But I do like it. I prefer the front more than the rear. I think the rear, the way that teardrop of the glass goes in and those big hips, I'm still not quite sure about that. I don't like the wheel design, sorry Mini, and I definitely don't like the fact this has got JCW badges on it and it's not a JCW. And that's no criticism of the trim level. I just think it dilutes. You know, I want the JCW to be a JCW, not just some trim level and some badges. Ride quality is firm but acceptable, but I think for some people they might find it too firm. But then my argument to that would be, don't buy a Mini. And then internally, I like it because I like the other two members of the family. I like the circular display. There is a nod to heritage. I know for some people that's way too big and way too domineering in the cabin, but I really like it. It's cool and funky. The steering wheel is nice to look at. It's too fat, and especially up the sort of 10 to and 10 past, definitely too fat. But these seats look great and they're very, very comfortable. And it's nice to drive. It's sporty and responsive to drive. I have concerns about the range. I think this car, ideally, I know WLTP is 250 miles, but I think real world range should have been around about 250 miles. And I think it should have had more rapid charging capability. 95 kilowatts for me in today isn't enough. It's not fast enough. We've got so many more rapid chargers out there. If you'd have done that 3 years ago, it was more than ample, because most DC chargers in public were only 50 kilowatts anyway. And that's just not the case anymore. You rock up to something like a grid serve and you've got 150, 200, 250 kilowatt chargers, maybe even 350 kilowatt chargers on Ionity. And you know, it's pointless by 150 kilowatts because this thing won't do it. And I think it would just make the small range more livable with, because you could get your 150 to 200 miles back again in 15 minutes instead of half an hour. And I just think for some people that's going to be a blocker to them buying this car. It's like the first Mini Electric, absolutely brilliant thing to drive down a road, arguably drove as good as a Cooper S. Price point was great because it was actually cheaper than the petrol version. But the thing that let that down was its range was terrible. And in the winter, as we're coming into the winter, when the temperatures drop, that range is going to be even less. So, you know, I think whether it's a battery pack limitation or a motor limitation, I don't know. But I think this car needed a little bit more than that. But if you can live with that, if you're buying it as a city car, as you know, you're not going to do that many big journeys, or you're happy with stopping every 150 or so miles to have a bit of a half an hour charge, then this car's perfect for you. And it drives really nicely, and that's an important thing. So it's a mixed bag for me. I like it. I like the styling. I think it's it's a nearly there. It's a close, but it's not for me. There's a few things that could just have been done just a little bit better. Yeah. Anyway, I've got absolutely no idea where I am now, because I haven't been following a route, I've just been following my nose, but I don't know where my nose has taken me. So I might have to plug my sat-nav in and try and find my way back to base camp where we started. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you think of the new Mini Aceman. But if you enjoyed that one, please give me a thumbs up. Please don't forget to subscribe to Petrol Ped for plenty more content to come. And if you want to ring that little notification bell, you'll be notified when I drop a video, although Mondays and Fridays at 6 PM UK time, that's when you'll find me. But I'm going to keep on enjoying the Mini Aceman. You take care, guys. Drive safe.